Have you ever found yourself completely, inexplicably drawn to someone who just seems out of reach? Someone who pulls away, runs cold, or flat out rejects you, yet somehow your mind just obsesses over them even more? Look, welcome to this explainer. What you're feeling is an agonizing, almost brutally universal human experience. And today, we are going to unpack the hidden engine behind this entire dynamic. We're going to expose the exact hidden mechanisms that make unrequited love feel so incredibly powerful, and why letting go can literally feel identical to breaking a severe chemical addiction.
When we get stuck in this loop, it is so ridiculously easy to blame ourselves, right? We lay awake asking, why am I doing this? Why can't I just walk away? But we need to completely reframe this painful dynamic. This is not a personal failure. It's absolutely not a sign of weakness. What you are actually experiencing is a visceral, biological hijacking of the human brain. Your subcortical systems, the ancient, deeply buried parts of your brain designed strictly to keep you alive, are reacting to uncertainty in a way that entirely overrides your conscious, logical mind. And to break free, we first have to look at the invisible psychological traps that were set for you long before you ever even met this person.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The anatomy of the chase. Before we even peek at your brain chemistry, we have to understand the massive traps set by biology and society. And it all starts with a psychological principle called the scarcity effect. Simply put, human beings are hardwired to overvalue whatever is hard to get. Think of a rare diamond, right? Its rarity is exactly what dictates its massive worth. Well, our minds play a really cruel trick on us by applying this exact same principle to human beings. We subconsciously equate emotional unavailability with high value. And to make matters worse, our culture completely glorifies this. Movies, books, songs, they constantly feed us this narrative that if we just persist, if we just try harder, we will eventually win them over. We're taught to frame this agony as some sort of noble romantic quest, rather than what it actually is, a deeply ingrained psychological trap. Which brings us to part 2, your brain on unpredictability. So how does this sense of scarcity actually rewire the neurobiology of the chase? Well, in modern dating, we often call this breadcrumbing, getting these tiny, random bits of attention that keep you totally hooked, while any real, solid commitment stays just out of reach. In clinical psychology, this is known as intermittent reinforcement. See, predictable affection, that teaches your nervous system to relax and actually feel safe. But unpredictable rewards, they do something entirely different. They train you on a primal level to chase. And this illustrates a pretty terrifying reality. Your nervous system treats unpredictable romantic attention exactly like a gambler waiting for a massive jackpot payout. I mean it. It's the exact same mechanism as a slot machine. When you pull the lever at a casino, you do it because the very next spin might just pay off. So when an emotionally unavailable partner goes ice cold and then suddenly, out of nowhere, sends a warm text or makes a late-night call, boom, it lands like a massive dopamine hit. Research actually shows that these intermittent reward schedules in relationships produce receptor-level changes in your brain that are virtually indistinguishable from a chemical addiction.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast in these dopamine spikes. Look at how an unpredictable partner generates a neurochemical storm that perfectly mirrors a casino slot machine, completely dwarfing the brain's baseline response to a predictable, safe partner. Why does this happen? Because dopamine doesn't actually signal pleasure like most people think. It signals anticipated reward. It fires on what neuroscientists call prediction error. When a partner violently alternates between intense fiery connection and cold, silent withdrawal, it generates these massive prediction error spikes that your brain literally codes as extreme life-or-death significance. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. You become neurologically dependent not on the partner's actual love, but on the agonizing, repetitive pattern of losing and regaining it. The crushing lows actually become the required setup for the intoxicating highs. Without the painful withdrawal, the eventual reconnection simply doesn't produce that same massive rush. Your brain stops treating their inconsistency as a giant red flag and starts treating it as a problem you desperately need to solve. And that keeps you locked in a constant, heavy, exhausting state of hypervigilance.
Part 3, the anxious-avoidant trap. So why are some of us more prone to this than others? Well, your childhood blueprint largely determines how susceptible you are to this specific dopamine loop. Often, this intensely painful chase is actually the result of deeply ingrained, entirely opposite fears violently clashing into one another. When anxious and avoidant attachment styles meet, their hidden wounds fit together like a jagged, toxic puzzle. An anxiously attached person carries a core, fundamental fear of abandonment, to To them, any emotional distance literally feels life-threatening, so they instinctively pursue closeness just to survive. But the avoidant partner, they carry a core fear of engulfment, an absolute terror of being smothered or losing their independence. So you can see the trap. An anxious person's desperate need for connection perfectly and tragically triggers an avoidant person's absolute deepest terror.
And this clash creates what clinicians refer to as the waltz of pain. Let's break it down. Step 1. The anxious partner pushes for emotional connection and reassurance. Step 2. To the avoidant partner, this loving pursuit feels like a massive, suffocating wave. Step 3. So the avoidant instinctively withdraws to protect themselves and reclaim their space. Step 4. The anxious partner perceives this sudden withdrawal as ultimate rejection. Their panic completely skyrockets, and they chase even harder. It is a vicious, endless, escalating feedback loop that ultimately leaves both partners feeling profoundly frustrated, deeply traumatized, and entirely misunderstood by the person they care about.
If you are the one doing the chasing, the person running away probably feels incredibly cold, distant, and unfeeling to you. But the underlying reality is actually entirely different. You are not fighting a heartless wall. You are fighting a flooded human being. To the avoidant partner, that rising emotional intensity feels so genuinely dangerous that their amygdala, their brain's threat detector, fires off, their nervous system completely short-circuits, and their prefrontal cortex literally goes offline. They retreat behind these massive, seemingly impenetrable walls simply because the perceived threat of being emotionally consumed is just too much for their nervous system to bear. Part 4. The burden of the rejecter. Now, to truly understand the full scope of this dynamic, we need to shatter that romanticized cultural illusion of unrequited love and look at a perspective almost never talked about: the hidden suffering of the heartbreaker. When psychologists actually study unrequited love from both sides, they find two radically, wildly different realities. The pursuer, despite the pain, often feels like they are on this high-stakes, noble quest holding out for an ecstatic, movie-ending payoff. But the rejecter experiences a completely different, much darker reality. To them, the situation is a suffocating, totally no-win scenario. Contrary to all our cultural stereotypes of the smug heartbreaker, rejectors actually describe their experiences much more negatively than the heartbroken lovers do. The psychological distress the rejecter goes through is actually incredibly intense. They grapple with this pervasive inner turmoil, profound guilt, and a highly distressed reluctance to inflict emotional harm on someone who clearly cares for them. Furthermore, they suffer from a phenomenon called complete scriptlessness. Think about it. While our culture gives pursuers a million different scripts in movies on how to boldly win someone over, there is virtually zero societal guide on how to gracefully reject someone. This total lack of a script is exactly what forces them into passive avoidance, or the dreaded ghosting. And here's the real kicker. While the pursuer views their own persistence as a sign of true romantic dedication, the rejecter almost always experiences that exact same persistence as intrusive, demanding, and incredibly burdensome. So, where do we go from here? Part 5, Finding True Neural Synchrony. How do we finally break this toxic cycle? Well, we have to draw a very sharp line between the chaotic survival response of the chase and the actual calming biology of true attachment. The chase runs purely on dopamine and cortisol. It feels like constant urgency, a racing heart, butterflies in your stomach. But as a truly healthy relationship matures, your brain executes a neurochemical handoff. The dopamine spikes decrease, while oxytocin and serotonin take over. The entire experience shifts from chaotic intensity to deep, grounding security. Now, a word of warning. If your nervous system is fully addicted to the chase, this new calm might actually feel a little boring at first. But you have to realize that boredom is actually what true safety feels like. And establishing that safety paves the way for something absolutely incredible called interpersonal neural synchrony. When two people experience genuine mutual attraction and build a secure connection, their brain activity patterns literally begin mirroring each other. Facilitated by mirror neurons in your brain, your heart rates, your breathing, even your cortical activity all begin to align. This literal brain-to-brain synchrony predicts a lasting, successful connection far more reliably than physical appearance, shared hobbies, or that initial intense dopamine-fueled obsession. And the most important part, you cannot force or negotiate this chemistry. It requires two fully available nervous systems, period. So, if you want to break free, you have to approach this clinically. Begin by literally tracking your highs and lows on a piece of paper. Seeing the cycle mapped out exposes its mechanical, predictable, repetitive nature. Then you have to consciously build up your tolerance for steady-state, calm connection without falsely interpreting that calmness as a lack of love. Most importantly, you have to redefine your worth entirely outside of their validation. Listen to me. Your identity cannot be determined by someone else's inability to choose you. To truly heal, you must grieve the fantasy of what could have been rather than obsessing over the flawed, painful reality of the person actually standing in front of you.
The psychology and the neuroscience are absolutely clear on this. The thrill of the chase is very often just the loud echo of our own deepest insecurities, amplified by a brain desperately seeking its next intermittent reward. It is an exhausting, completely unwinnable game. So the final, most crucial question you have to ask yourself right now is this: will you stay addicted to the chase, letting your neurochemistry endlessly dictate your self-worth? Or are you finally ready to step away from the slot machine, endure the withdrawal, and make space for a kind of love that doesn't require you to constantly prove you deserve it? Remember, the single most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. Invest in it wisely.